Utilities Commission meeting to order, 7:32 p.m. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the Utilities Commission meeting of November 16th, 2015.
I move that the minutes for the utilities meeting on September 16th be approved as submitted.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show we unanimously approve the minutes. Operating funds on hand for the Utilities Commission, total cash on hand comes to $984,004.54. And our capital funds for water and sewer hookup, we have $495,400. The third order of business under the Utilities Commission agenda is the payment of the bills.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show we unanimously agreed to pay the bills, which is always nice. That brings us to Bob Sipes, Utilities Commission report.
Hello, Mayor and Council. I only have a few things. We're installing a new sewer line over from the end of Queen Street over to Water Street. The old line was running through somebody's yard. It was within an easement, but the sewer line was in bad condition when we did the smoke testing a few years ago. Smoke came up in the yard, so we knew that we had some bad joints. So we are relocating it over about 5 feet, right down the property line.
So are we talking about Riverside Terrace or over by Wilmer Park?
At the end of Queen Street by Wilmer Park.
Okay, that end, okay.
Going over through the
I was trying
grass
figure out
to
which-
Water Street.
okay. So it's a fun street.
There was a sinkhole on Water Street. We said we were going to dig it up and check it out. We dug it up and everything underneath of it was very firm. We found no soft ground, no reason for the settling. And it was approximately 6 inches deep, but everything underneath of it was hard as a rock. We opened it up while it was drizzling and the ground and everything underneath was dry. So it's not infiltration, there's nothing settling under there, so the plan now is just to finish cutting out that patch and get it blacktopped again. Well pump number 4 had to be replaced. We got the well driller in, they pulled out the old one, it was seized up and replaced it with a new pump. At the hospital, it appears that there is nothing that they can't do. They're very far off of what was the action plan up there. As I've told you before, they doubled the amount of surfactant per injection. They're installing plugs in the screen when they do the injections. They have equipment up there that is failing on a routine basis. Every weekly report, there is equipment failure on it. And now they are doing what they call clean water injections. So they are injecting with nothing but water and then removing nothing but water.
Why are they doing that?
When you say equipment failures, what is the failure?
There's a GFI up there and the pumps that they use keep tripping the GFI. And so apparently what they do is they take that equipment and they remove it from the hole and they get another pump that runs on a 12-volt battery and they hook it up to a truck to pump out the volume of water that they want to pump out. They are also pumping out, the report and the pilot study said they would be removing 3 times the amount of water that they put into the ground. They're not doing that. It comes out to less than 2 times the amount of water that they're putting into the ground.
Why are they pumping straight water into the ground? What's happened to the ice? I mean, why are they doing that?
Of course, pumping clean water into the ground isn't cleaning anything. So the only thing that I can think is they're using it as a barometer. If we put clean water into this well, do we get clean water out of this well? To determine how well the well has been cleaned.
So there's been an Ivy Sol put down that well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So what they're doing now, I believe, is they put clean water in, pull the water back out, and see if it has any type of oil product in it. That tells them if the well is clean or not. Which goes back to my whole point, that this whole process was never intended to clean the contaminated site.
Just the
It was
wells.
only intended to clean the wells.
Well, is there a way that we can dig like core samples around the wells just to see how far the reach is?
When we were going through the pilot study negotiations, we asked if we could just split sample out of those wells, and we were refused.
Split sample meaning,
That we have our lab person show up the same time as their lab person. We collect one sample, and we split it in half. They take half to their lab, we take half to our lab. The reason for that is veracity. You want to make sure that the lab is doing a good job and using the correct techniques
Quality
for
control.
testing for what they're testing for. And since our lab or any other lab would have no stake in this, including long-term income, there are benefits to that. And that's something that the state does routinely. If we get suspect results at a water plant or a wastewater plant, they will send their guy up to split samples and verify that what our lab has given us back are real numbers. It also gives you the opportunity to make sure that samples have not been altered. So you have two groups of people there to verify that, yes, that water came out of that well, it went into those bottles, it was sealed, and it went to the lab. And I'm not casting any aspersions on what they're doing, but that's what it prevents. Somebody from just taking distilled water and pouring it in a jug and sending it to the lab.
Or sloppy techniques.
Yes.
And allow, I mean,
Yes.
that's the way science is normally done.
What was their reasoning for refusing your request?
What they did is not refuse it. They failed to respond to it.
They just ignored it,
They ignored the requests.
which is a refusal in absent.
And it was asked more than once. And that's come up quite a few times. Hey, if the hospital won't sample, why don't we do the sampling? Well, the wells don't belong to us, and we would need their permission to do it. And that's everything that I have.
Solar field, it says, on our agenda.
The solar field? Okay. I got an email. I do not have firsthand knowledge of this, but we did get an email saying the interconnect was approved and that it was gonna happen. I don't know if that's actually happened yet. It has?
It's happened.
That email said we could turn the switch on.
It's on.
Okay,
Is it?
so it's
Oh, we
on.
didn't have our ribbon cutting.
I know, we gotta figure that out.
That's good. That means this should be the last $15,000 monthly
utility
bill
bills. Right,
that we get.
after all this time.
Yes.
Terrific.
And now I have nothing else.
Are there any questions or comments for Bob?
Good rest of them.
It looks like you're about to say something.
I always look like that.
Okay, if there's no questions, let's,
Move the meeting be closed.
second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the meeting for the Utilities Commission is adjourned.
Thank you.
I don't know if I have the operating funds.
Here, I do.
Okay, we're gonna start the mayor and council meeting at 7:41 PM. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the mayor and council meeting of December 7th, 2015.
I would move that the minutes for the mayor and council meeting be approved December the 7th, 2015.
Second one.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show we unanimously approve the minutes. The next item of business is operating funds on hand. Total operating cash on hand for unrestricted use right now is $1,787,577.42. We also have in the restricted funds, $192,740. Those funds are assigned to the rail trail, waterfront, marina activities, and recreational initiatives. Lastly, our total funds, the total of those two numbers put together is $1,980,317.42. The next item on the agenda is the payment of the bills.
back where you guys like it.
I'll move the payment of the bills.
All right, is there a
I
second?
have one question.
Okay.
And I see it all the time. Business cards. Has anybody ever taken account of how many business cards are used? And, if you
I
order
still have
more,
mine from 1970.
but the more you order, the cheaper it gets.
Those are probably
We
for-
spend.
I know, I think
it's
Case
like a
makes them.
No,
He makes them?
He places the order for them. I
Yeah.
think
He
we do
designs them.
printing.
It's like a small
But these are
fortune in
probably for
business
canine
cards.
photography.
Around here, do you really
No.
need them? Everybody knows who you are.
I'm not talking about
I know, I know.
myself.
I know.
I know the police department uses them, but,
Well, this one is under planning. and
I
zoning.
was just wondering if somebody could do like
We
a,
want to make it a budget item so we can really keep it from going overboard.
if you need 1,000, it ought to be cheaper to order 1,000.
It
at a
might be,
time.
but you might never use 1,000 before some information on your card changes.
Streets and highways.
But we'll do an analysis
Okay,
of
thank
just
you.
how many have been granted and who's getting them.
No, you can second the payment of bills.
All right, there was a motion to pay the bills. Is there a second?
Yeah.
That's
yes.
not a bad problem. if that's-
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Whatever. So,
Let the record show, we unanimously agreed to pay the bills. That brings us to our police report, Chief Adrian Baker.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I would like to present to you the report for November 2015. And running down our list, our administrative hours were 43 at 3%. Our criminal investigations were 42 at 3%. Accident investigations were 8 at 1%. Vehicle patrol, 702 hours, 51%. Foot patrol was 134 at 10%. 114 for training at 8%. Court was 17 hours at 1%, and overtime 204 hours at 15%. And you should have found in your boxes, I see it in the desk here, that's
Now, what category did you put the college lockdown into?
I just, on there, it actually says Washington College.
I saw that. No, I saw it on the overtime, but where is it on the activity? Which category did it go into?
Regular and overtime.
Yeah, for overtime. And the overtime too.
Just in plain overtime?
Yes, sir.
You didn't classify it as anything like investigation or
No,
anything
sir,
of that?
regular overtime.
Okay, all right.
We had 18 adult arrests, 56 separate charges, 12 were CDS, 9 each for firearms and trespassing. Firearms might catch your eye with 9. To explain that, with regard to the college, 4 of those charges were to bring that event from a missing person to an arrest warrant, really was the main purpose for that. And then we did have 1 incident with a firearm related to a burglary, and there were several subjects involved in that, and each was charged, so it jumps it up to 9. We had 6 thefts, 5 FOAs, 3 credit card fraud, 2 assaults, and 1 each for arson, deadly weapon, disorderly, ex parte, failure to obey, obstructing and hindering a peace order, resisting arrest, rogue and vagabond, and trespassing. Back to the fraud, just while it's on my mind, that scam that has occurred in the past is going around again. I just want to make the public aware, and if you would, elderly people are receiving calls, and basically the premise is your grandson or your granddaughter is in trouble, in fact in jail, and they need some money to post bond, and then they instruct the people to go to get a MoneyGram. The people get the MoneyGram, then they tell them to send it to them to help their grandchild, and then of course they lose their money. So be mindful not to fall for that scam. If you have any concerns or questions, call the police department. If it really is the real deal, you're going to have time to check it out and take that action, but probably it's a scam. We had 3 juvenile arrests. The charges were 1 each at assault, malicious destruction of property, and 1 bomb threat, which occurred at the middle school. We had 14 Part 1 offenses, 3 were cleared by arrest, 1 by exception. We had 20 Part 2s, 10 were cleared by arrest, 4 by exception. 17 motor vehicle citations, 69 motor vehicle warnings, 211 red speed citations, which may be a light that people are catching on. Typically we're around 400, so it might be an anomaly. We'll have to see how the next months play out. and we had 1 criminal citation. And Ward 1 calls for service for 15.4%, Ward 2, 161 at 42%, Ward 3, 81 at 21%, Ward 4, 100 at 26%. Outside the jurisdiction was 5. Our busiest day, or rather our busiest time of the week was from 3 to 4, and our busiest day of the week were Monday and Tuesday, pretty closely as far as statistics go. Again, be mindful to not fall for that scam out there. Pay attention to your neighbors, because people do take advantage of people this time of year. And other than that concludes my report.
Chief, is it just me, or was Ward 3 pretty light this month in terms of calls for service? Because I usually get 2 or 3 pages, but we barely just got over 1 page.
I'd say that answers the question then.
Right. Is that usual for, I guess, the month of November for things to?
I'm not aware of any November pattern that occurs.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I want to say that my grandchildren would know better to call me if they're in jail, so that I don't not fall for that scam.
That would work.
You never get calls that the grandparents are in
Thank you,
jail.
Chief.
That's right.
You're gonna bail them out.
Okay, for the last year or so, we've had community members, as well as Tom Ravel from the State Highway Administration, basically examining the town as a whole and coming up with some recommendations for how SHA can help improve certain areas in terms of safety, speed, traffic calming, and things of that nature. So I believe, David, are you going to give the summary?
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. You all have a copy of the report, so I don't need to go through all the individual recommendations in detail. And the main purpose of this evening is to formally present that report to the mayor and council for their consideration and acceptance. My understanding from, excuse me, Tom Ravel from SHA is that the process we're involved in is once the council, the mayor and council have accepted the report, they cast that report in a formal letter to the SHA. SHA then, excuse me, then you accepts that report, uses that report as part of its submissions in seeking funding for the various projects and recommendations that the report covers. The task force would like to thank Tom Ravel and Jeff Wentz for steering us through this process over the last several months and bring us this point whereby we've managed to coalesce our thoughts and our recommendations into the report that you have in hand. The report basically contains 3 sections and 2 exhibits. There's a brief background, a discussion of the issues and concerns that the recommendations address, and then some detailed recommendations that fall into 2 categories. The task force itself comprises a resident from each of the 4 wards and a representative of Washington College. And I'd just like to, for the record, if I may, introduce those people. Anne Vincent of Ward 1, Anne is here. Myself, David Bowering from Ward 2, Brand Troop from Ward 3, and Herb Freeman from Ward 4, who is not here tonight. Herb has had some surgery and is incapacitated and can't be here. And we have Gerald Roderick, who was the representative for Washington College, and he couldn't be here this evening either. I'd just like to take a moment just to recap how we get to where we are and where we go from here. This community task force initiative began really as a grassroots effort by the residents of Washington Avenue Neighborhood Association to bring their concerns and issues regarding traffic, safety, various other things on the 213 corridor to the attention of the SHA. This ultimately led to a request by the town to the SHA for Chestertown to be considered for one or more of the programs that SHA had that addressed the concerns that often arose in towns where state highways were passing through communities. And some of those are called streetscape programs. They're programs related to traffic quieting. And, excuse me, I've got a little bit of laryngitis. So. The town also requested for consideration for the Community Enhancement Program funding. And SHA's response was very supportive, both to the Washington Neighborhood Association and to the town, and they requested that the town establish a task force to identify the issues that the town wanted to have addressed and to make recommendations regarding them that could be put together in a task force report for submission to SHA. And that's how we came into being. At that point, the council decided or requested to expand the scope of the report, not just to include Washington Avenue and Maple Avenue, but to cover all state roads in the town, particularly Flatland Road, Route 514, and we've tried to do that. You may remember that there was a sidewalk feasibility study on Flatland Road conducted in 2013, and you'll see in the report that we have recommended that be revitalized and given some attention and possibly become the basis for some work in that area. The two categories of recommendations that you'll find in the report are the following. The first is the reduction of heavy traffic on Route 213 and general traffic quietening along that route. And secondly, the second category is the installation of new or the enhancement of existing crosswalks, sidewalks, and the improvement of pedestrian safety on routes 213, 514, 291, and 20. I would just like to, this is the only one that I'm going to actually read from the report, but I would like to read this one in relationship to the traffic problem, because this recommendation drives it all, separating it from the pavement issue. What we say on that is the best solution is a bypass, which we strongly support. So, but while supporting a bypass, we recognize that its completion is not practical in any reasonable amount of time to address these immediately pressing problems. Therefore, we support placing restrictions and rerouting of heavy truck traffic along the Route 213 corridor from the Chester River Bridge to Morgneck Road, excusing farm and emergency vehicles and local deliveries. And that pretty much drives our recommendations in relationship to that first category. The crosswalks issue, those with, and the sidewalks are in bad repair. They're SHA themselves have said that they've fallen below standards, below criteria as a result over the years of resurfacing of the roads, the sidewalks, curbs are no longer the required height, and the concrete itself is deteriorating and so on. There's need for enhancement of crosswalks to improve pedestrian safety, both along the 213 corridor and other parts of town, particularly in the Flatland Road area. So that basically is all I really want to say tonight, and would like to thank the community that we represent. We would like, on their behalf, to thank the mayor and the council for throwing a spotlight on these issues, and for SHA of coming to the table and showing some interest in helping us to address these problems. So with that, I submit this report to the mayor and council for approval, and look forward to developments from this point. If there are any questions, we have
Liz?
ourselves, the task force, and we also have SHA representatives, which we'd be glad to respond to.
I think this is a wonderful report, actually. It's just, I think, what was needed, and I'd like to compliment your task force on it. I have one question, and I don't know if it falls within the expertise of the task force, but since Mr. Ravel is here, I'll ask him. You've recommended repair and upgrade sidewalks all along Maple, well, anywhere that you're recommending repair and upgrading of sidewalks to current standards. I'd like to know whether those current standards include appropriate curb cuts for wheelchairs. Because separately, while this has been going on, I've been leading an initiative to try to improve accessibility throughout town. And so this would be an excellent opportunity to reinforce that. So do those standards include curb cuts for handicap access?
In a word, yes.
Good. So that would be sort of automatic if you're repairing and adding crosswalks then?
At a minimum.
Great.
Our current standard for sidewalk width is 5 feet, and if we can't get 5 feet because of significant trees or buildings or, retaining walls, things like that, we can get a waiver on a case-by-case basis. But wheelchair accessible ramps are required at a minimum.
Right. Super. That's
At all
good to know.
crosswalks.
Yeah.
Side streets, when we tie in, we have to put in, we have to press it across entrances, and maintain a certain slope, 2%, so that wheelchairs can traverse safely.
And I would like to reinforce the comment about enforcement, which we'll look at that down the road for sure.
So we're going to, as a council, I would imagine, endorse this report. What happens after that? I just want to make sure that all the hard work that our citizens did with you guys doesn't get left on a shelf somewhere in the bureaucratic files of SHA. Nothing against SHA, but it's kind of a big organization, and we're such a small town. How do we make sure, I guess my question would be, what would be the next steps for us to work with directly with SHA to get some of these projects, implemented?
Once you send us the letter, I'm going to go after the funding. I'm going to use that as leverage and when we have a letter of support from the local town, I use that to go after the funding for sidewalk. For existing sidewalk, we have one fund group. For reconstruction sidewalk. For new sidewalk, we have another fund group. And if the town has a sidewalk ordinance, that covers the town's participation in that.
So what you need from us basically is a letter endorsing these recommendations, signed by all of us?
Yeah, mayor and council.
But
Jeff Wentz will go after the roadway safety issues like the speed limit reduction, crosswalk locations, lighting, that segment.
But I do want to just clarify that there are funds available to address specific sidewalk infrastructure, correct? For existing and sidewalk infrastructure that's currently not there?
There are funds.
Okay.
They compete statewide, but it's a good, clean project, and we don't have environmental issues or, anything significant. Every project that we put through design is going to construction.
Right. And when it came to talking about the sidewalk issues and importantly, ranking them in terms of priority, I see, here, David, you have in your report that Washington Avenue is a priority, and you see that the area Flatland Road, which has no type of infrastructure whatsoever, is a little bit de-emphasized in your report. It's certainly there, absolutely, but we're talking about an area that has no type of sidewalk infrastructure, juxtaposed next to an area that, the infrastructure is in a state of disrepair, but at least it's there, Was there any type of actual pedestrian study that was conducted where you were actually counting the number of pedestrians when it came to actually determining what the overall priorities were when it came to sidewalk installations?
Could I just say one thing, Tom, before you respond to that? All we really had in regard to that was the feasibility study that was conducted in 2013. And we saw that as the, if that got revitalized and during the course of approaching it, refined, that was the basis for looking at that. And since the feasibility study had already been conducted and had been accepted really as a concept paper, but at the time, as I said, at the time, the funding was not available, and therefore the project didn't go forward. My understanding from Tom, I'm not putting words in his mouth, is that the situation is different now. And with this initiative, we can pursue that.
Right. Okay. Well, I would certainly love to endorse, the report that you all drafted, but, I would want to see Flatland Road become that main priority when it comes to the actual sidewalk installation. When we're talking about the overall safety of our pedestrians, we have a region in the town that is trafficked all hours of the day and also at night that has no type of infrastructure whatsoever. So the main goals of the report is to, of course, address the safety of our pedestrians and our motorists in Chestertown. We have an area that has a lot of pedestrians and no infrastructure. It seems to me that that would be the main priority. And obviously I'm speaking from a perspective of a representative of Ward 3. Let me throw that out there. However, when it comes to actual boots on the ground and people walking, you seem to have a lot more pedestrians on Flatland Road that are much more visible and they're right on the road. With that, at least with Washington Avenue, there is that setback, and they're not physically walking on the main street.
But weren't there two? Wasn't one a $4 million project and one a $6 million project? Four and two for Flatland Road. How much money were we talking about here for what we have in this report?
We actually shaved off from what's in that feasibility study. We take it to Sutton. And we capped it at Lincoln, or Washington Park.
So it doesn't...
Felt that within Coventry, it was very hit and miss as far as support for extending the sidewalk facilities. We felt taking a townwide approach, the greater good.
Well, also, if I heard Tom correctly, there's two different pods of money. There's money for rehabilitating existing sidewalk, and then there's money for creating new sidewalks, so that the two don't necessarily compete for the same pot of money. Am I right? So I
In
don't
other words,
think,
if you rehab or you build new, you're not taking money from one to the other.
it's not
separate
one at the
altogether.
expense of the other, is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
Also, some of the sidewalks on the 213 corridor aren't there. I mean, in the report, it is to extend sidewalks where there haven't been any. So, and there's a lot more foot traffic in town than, our concern was generated, mostly Jerry spoke often about the increased traffic from Washington College when the new building opens up for the academic use. And you have people walking along the sides of the roads through Chestertown right now at the time. And it seemed that it was easy, not easier, but easy to take care of finishing those sidewalk projects that had begun and never were, for whatever reason, never completed. You can't get completely down through town on Washington Avenue and Maple Avenue.
Right. And we're also, talking about an area where you can't walk into town from an entire main state highway that has several neighborhoods coming off of it. Was the discussion about the new Gateway Park and all the infrastructure that was just added with the rail trail and the roundabout, I'm assuming that was incorporated in the overall discussion as well, correct? Because I feel as if that's a natural kind of piggyback off of the work that we've already done and already started. And you're also talking about an area that has arguably the most children in Chestertown also. So, I endorse the report, and I think you all did a fabulous job, and I'm not really, here to argue and get into the weeds. I would just like to propose that, the installation of sidewalks on Flatland Road become more of a priority and more of an emphasis.
Why don't we
throughout
change the
report.
wording to equally as important as the work on 213 is the work on Flatland Road? And I think that's a fair thing.
Well, I think-
One from one the other, but it's no problem for us when we submit this to change that to, and I agree with you, Sam, I think you did an admirably job of arguing for your ward, so.
I respect that, and oftentimes we talk about the downtown priorities trumping the priorities for the rest of the town. So I'm simply speaking for, the communities that tend to be on the outskirts of Chestertown. You have residents in Ward 3 who live on Flatland Road. I had this conversation when I was knocking on doors. They don't feel a part of the community. And I think, this goes a long way in addressing some of those issues because, we're giving them the means to get from their neighborhood and to get from their subdivision to our parks and into Chestertown. So,
Sam, there's a lot of text in this report
Yes.
about 213. There's almost no text preceding the recommendations about 514 and Route 20.
right.
Yeah, we can
Maybe
add that, though.
Maybe the addition of a paragraph justifying, just as the word you've been using, justifying that recommendation there would strengthen it quite a bit.
I'm assuming.
There is a paragraph on page 5, the second paragraph on page 5, which occupies about 1/3 of the page.
Right, but it's not there like you have on page 6, you have a lot of text.
Right.
Page 6 and 7, you have a lot of text about the second ward, and then you get to the throwaway on almost, I can see what you're saying. We get to point B at the top of page 8, and you've got 3 lines.
I think when we submit it, we will submit it with the idea that it's equally as important to have the new sidewalk as it is to rehab the old sidewalk.
I agree. I think, just to cut to the
Let me make a
chase.
suggestion, if I may. The task force has prepared and submitted its report. It's not the task force that is submitting a report to SHA.
Right.
It's the mayor and council. It's now within
The ball's in our
your
court.
purview
Yep.
to craft what you want to craft. We've sort of done our job, and now there's a little bit left for you
Just a
guys.
paragraph.
I think my recommendation is going to be that we have our staff draft a letter endorsing the report, adding some language about Flatland Road so that it has, the weight, it's weighted a little more equally.
If there's an opportunity to shape the report a little more, I'd like to see a little more specific reference to the 200 block of Philosopher's Terrace where there's not a sidewalk. And if we're going to make improvements at 10th Street and 213, it may be diverting school children who would normally cross Campus Avenue down to 10th Street. And you get in that block, Philosopher's Terrace, and you're right in the middle of the road. And now we've had some people parking on both sides of that
We only
road.
dealt with state roads.
It's only state roads that
Only
were.
state roads.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Joe. I've been, for 8 years, I've been saying it's ridiculous we don't have a sidewalk on Philosopher's Terrace, but
Especially with the skateboarders.
Yeah, my son's
It would be on a
one.
sidewalk if we had a sidewalk.
in fact, I've seen the mayor walk down the middle of the road on.
Where else am I supposed to go?
Yeah, there's no place to walk on that block.
These programs don't extend to that, do they? Because they're not state.
Isn't that a snow road to the hospital in terms of,
Still not a state road.
is there like an out there for us on that road?
It's not a road to the hospital. Brown Street is the road to the hospital.
Right, but I mean from 213, that's the track that the ambulances take to go to.
It often is, but it's still not a state road. So I totally agree with you, but I think for this particular recommendation,
I would also say, in response to the discussion, that we were directed basically to rank. He wanted to prioritize the list. And in most cases, we tried to assess a combination of things. What would be fairly easy to attain, and also in the example of the crosswalks, the ones that had the most accidents seemed to have the greatest need for some upgrade. And so there were many different
criteria.
items considered by us in order to get this ranking to head it off to the
They
state.
just want to approve the freaking thing.
There's a lot of reasoning behind each of them. There's a lot of reasoning behind each of the parts of the report.
Gotcha. Well, thank you guys. I hope you guys don't take our feedback to mean that we don't think you did a good job, because we absolutely appreciate everything that you guys did. You volunteered your time, and it created a great report. And we will endorse all of your recommendations. We may add some language to make Flatland Road maybe a little more visible in our letter to the SHA, and then we'll keep moving the ball forward on
But just
our.
simply that this is a new project, as opposed to extending another one.
You're not stealing from one.
Presentation. Could I ask you a question about, from this point forward, where or is community involvement in what happens from this point? Or are we now done as a community and it's the town?
We don't know where to get the money yet.
Bill?
Well, I'll tell you what I think. I think that the council will act on this, and we'll send it to the state highway, and if it doesn't become a graveyard, we might get some results. And with Tom's given us a lot of support since he's been here.
Right.
But I can bring out things like this from 2004 with District Engineer Lindsay, where we're going to do a 514 study. So the idea is that it's a group thing, and yet, is the community out of it? No, you're not out of it. You're still going to pressure us to do something that we can do, and to go or ask or cajole the state highway into keeping this on a front burner.
I think it's a little tricky, because once we send that letter, the ball goes from your court to our court, really to their court, and then our job becomes basically pestering SHA to keep this as a priority.
We'll have to recognize, though, that there was a bundle of money that was moved out of a subway and so forth, and so there may be a little more money that you have this year than you had 2 years ago.
Yeah, Baltimore's not getting the red line.
Yeah, I know, you don't want to say
We'll see.
anything, but
We could call it the red line.
I can read the Sun paper, and that's what they say, so.
Okay, well, thank you guys for
very
the
much.
report. Really appreciate
Thank
all
you,
the work you
David.
guys did. Did a great job.
David woke me up. Hey, David, thanks for waking me up. I was asleep there for a second.
You still,
Karen, would you come up, please? I'm sorry. Is it okay?
Town manager's report.
First thing on my agenda involves Chestertown, and you made a funding request and came to our last meeting. And I think your funding request was for $1,500. And we gave a similar amount, though smaller, last year, not knowing how successful this would be. And there's some changes which I think are for the better. And I think this is a worthy cause that the bank stepped forward and done, and this is unique in that you don't see this happening all the time. So what is the pleasure of the council on this request?
I never got a chance to see the written report, but it was certainly a success last year, and we put money into other projects that don't have quite that big an impact. And there's some good that comes out of it. That's the real nice part of it. In the end, there are some goods.
Ed did, the second year, was able to donate twice as much money to the backpack program as the first year. And we're hoping to maybe not double it again, but certainly increase it again.
I think we can vote.
Liz, can I have a motion?
I move that we allocate, grant $1,500 to Chestertown for 2016.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
On behalf of the children who received the funding from this, I'd like to thank the mayor and council.
Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
And all your work.
Yeah, guys do great stuff.
And I guess while we're on sort of that subject of things that are in addition to our earlier budget, Case Des Moines put together this contract with Macron for the preliminary engineering report that is basically an engineering report that would bring seed money for the USDA funding that's seven-figure funding that we hope will raise the elevation of the marina from where it is by about 2 feet all the way across, and put in storm drain systems and improve the water quality. That's how they get into projects. But you can't be considered without this engineering report for these funds. So you have it in front of you. We sent it to you earlier this week. What's the pleasure of the council on that? There is a timeline on this. Engineering report has to be finished by, I think, about February to get into a May funding round.
Is this the one for the marina?
The
This is for
engineers,
the larger USDA.
in order to apply for the grant.
We got the email about it.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that, it's like sunk money, but we cannot, you can't stop in the middle because the ship's going to go down if we don't do it, so.
Literally.
I think that certainly it should come out, it's waterfront property, take it out of that $200,000. What are we getting, 3% or 2% interest or something, so, if we get that, so. I think it would be a worthwhile project, and like anything else, if you don't try it, then we'll be sorry about it.
So I recommend that, I agree with Marty, and I recommend that we allocate $1,600 out of the restricted Washington College funds for this engineering study that we have to have if we're going to apply for the USDA funding.
So second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
And while we're talking about the marina, I don't know if you've seen the advertisement for the dredging of the marina.
Yes.
I put together, just I thought I grabbed it, put together the engineering for the dredging. And it's the basin area of the marina. It's not in front of the fish whistle. It's what you would think of when you're bringing a boat in to come on land. It's about 5,000 cubic yards. And it's a race with time, it really is. We have open dredging season that ends on February 15th. I'm expecting our license any day. The license gets folded into the 21-page document. The bid opening is on December 30th here. And if any of those things fail, like if we don't get the license in time, we can't dredge. We have the dredge spoil site, we have everything lined up for that. So I've got my fingers crossed. And we have several contractors that I've talked to who would respond in the middle of winter, if we do have a winter, and dredge out that portion. Subsequent to that, I hope to put in a contract for removal of the southern pier and replacement of the southern pier with the funds that we have, the matching funds that we have this year. See if we can afford that. But I don't want that to be the same contract, because dredge spoils go one place and old pilings go somewhere else, and that seemed to cause confusion with DNR. So I just want to bring you up to date on that. That funding is there already. We don't have to ask for it. It's been set aside for us. It's 100% grant money on the dredging. You also have on my report, a report from the Planning Commission. We sent the issue of a zoning amendment, text amendment. It came both to the mayor and council and to the planning commission, but our zoning ordinance says that you will forward those to the planning commission for their recommendation and their report. So you have it. Now, you didn't get it too long ago, so I wouldn't blame you if you said, hey, we want to consider this and we'll bring it up in our January meeting. I don't know how important time is there. This is not something we do all the time. So, I mean, caution, you can exercise caution, or if you're sure that you know what you want to do. It requires a public hearing, as I told you in my email today, and I tried to get that out early enough, as early as I got this.
I didn't quite understand the time restraint. What is the time restraint?
There's not a time restraint. If the planning commission had just not acted for 2 months, it would have been automatically recommended by them. But it still has to be passed by the mayor and council as a zoning change, which requires a full public hearing of all interested parties.
Within a certain amount of time?
No.
Oh.
No.
But this,
I mean,
just to be clear, this is only the text amendment about the number of islands on this.
right, and
Right,
it's,
and it's not approval in May because the site plan has not yet been approved by the
that's true.
planning commission.
That's true.
So,
Well, I have the utmost confidence in our planning commission.
Right.
I mean, they do a super job in, I've been to a couple of meetings, and if they don't think it's right, they have no problem saying no, and
yeah, so,
they apparently hardly endorse this. So.
right.
Well, it's a very large site. The C3 was designed to be small parcels with mixed uses on them, and so far, most of the parcels are small. This is the equivalent of 3 or 4 parcels. In fact, it was 2 parcels at one time. One was C1 and one was light industrial when Brooks's Mill was there. So, but it's zoning's not a category you get into very often, and you do cede your basically your opinions mostly to the planning commission. So what you would be doing if you said, hey, we want to act on this tonight, you could say, hey, we like it, we want to have a public hearing. Or you could just say, let's have the public hearing, and we'll answer it after we see if we have a lynch mob out here.
Well, I look at this, if you were to break that into 2 parcels, you'd have problems with traffic, really moving traffic through there. This actually solves a big problem by having one entity.
Well, like Liz says, don't get too focused on this, because the state highway has to approve the entrances and exits.
We're not approving the design, we're only approving the amendment to allow a 3rd island.
Yep.
For fuel pumps.
And that-
I did have one point, though. It says each island is 2 fuel pumps, but each of those fuel pumps is back-to-back. It's double, so there's really 4 pumps on an island.
Yes, and I think that you need to see a drawing pretty soon of what really they're recommending approval of, because that's not it, really. You know, I think people think of a canopy as an island. Well, they don't think of it as a canopy as an island. It's the pumps. These things, that's an island, that's an island, that's... So to me, it got very confusing because of the layman's term, you know, for island would be that whole canopied area. And in some jurisdiction, that's the definition.
And
It's the concrete base.
This doesn't affect any other gas station that we have in town, does it? In terms of like the acreage and
Only
passiveness?
equivalent acreage in the same zoning is right across the street from it, where, you know, the storage facility is.
East Coast storage. Yeah.
But it abuts a residential district, so it wouldn't be the same, according to the way this is written.
But none of the other gas stations that we have currently
Nope.
is going to be affected by
Nobody's
this.
anywhere near
Yeah.
3 3.5 or almost 4 acres. But looking at it, I think it's an opportunity. You have the rail trail behind it, you have these discussions we're having about people walking a flatland road. I mean, this is a nexus area. It needs to be really looked at by State Highway for entrance and exit.
Yeah,
How
because
well
of this, I
that
don't like this.
roundabout is working, you know? Look how well it works, so we continue it. So what's the pleasure of the council? Would you just like to schedule the hearing without comment about whether you're approving this? Would you just like to go ahead
It
and...
was if the hearing is gonna start talking about everything else but the specific amendment, you know?
Well, it's likely to happen, but that's not what it's for.
Exactly, which is why...
You'll have to pass that amendment as an ordinance. So you can say tonight, hey, we'd like to go the ordinance phase, and we'd like to have a public hearing about it, and we'll do that in January, so.
I think we should do that. I think this is a reasonable request.
I do too.
It's, it's a permitted, it's a permitted use in that zoning area. It is an unusually large lot. I do think we should anticipate resistance from other owners that aren't gonna get 2 extra pumps to come to this hearing and probably voice their opposition. But it is what it is. I mean, I do think it's a reasonable.
I think there are other hurdles that this site plan
There
will
may be,
have to
but
go
those are
through.
kinda out of our purview.
But that's not us, and that's why I'm like Sam, a little concerned that this public hearing is gonna go all into lots of other things that are not relevant, but
Well,
as
it's
far
easy
as the
as-
actual text amendment goes, I don't have any problem with it.
That'll be controversial enough for there
think?
aren't, yeah, sure, just the subject of the text amendment itself.
Well, I think we should schedule a public hearing for January.
Yeah,
And do you,
I made note that it was a unanimous decision.
Yeah.
You don't always get unanimous
You're right.
decisions out of the planning commission.
There wasn't everybody there, though.
Yeah,
So
there were only
not-
4 members
Oh, that
there.
might add something to it.
Well, there's 7 members. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have all done it, but it was unanimous that night.
I see.
The earliest that we could schedule the public hearing, I think, would be the second hearing in January, because we have to have a certain
18th.
amount of,
I don't think we should have it the same night as a meeting.
as separate from a meeting?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we should pick a separate Monday or two, or any night of the week, because you may have a crowd, and you should do it with the planning commission invited. So if someone says, hey, what's your rationale for this? And I think the letter is pretty good, it articulates it fairly well. But not always about that.
all right, so can you pick a date and email it to us?
I can, sure, I can.
How about
Or do we want to do
The week
dates
after.
right now?
Or-
You have to advertise.
Yeah, we do, we have to
Yeah.
advertise.
How
it.
long do we need to advertise? Jen?
It has to
2
be
weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. No earlier than mid-January.
Well, so our meetings are on the 4th and the 18th.
You got the 11th or the
The-
25th?
The
It'll be
20
the 19th because of, this is, yeah, that's a holiday.
So how about that, the week after, the one with the 25th in it?
I won't be here.
Is that too long, is that too far away for everybody?
I won't be back yet.
Brant?
Are we booked for the 25th for the
We were just,
playground direct?
yeah, why do I have that 6 to 7?
Yeah, you
Okay.
are upstairs.
Yes.
Yeah, well, we would probably want to have the meeting upstairs, so that's a bad date thanks for bringing
How
it
about
up.
the 20th, Wednesday the 20th?
That would be the
Commission.
planning commission night.
Can we do it as part of that meeting?
I would think so. They're
Yeah, I
they're not
can't see
going to have,
anything
they're
on
not
the
going to have a lot
horizon
on their
right now.
horizon.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect solution. If
7
they
o'clock.
want to have a separate meeting, they can have it downstairs, but, and send representatives.
7 o'clock?
Yeah. That guarantees it'll snow that night.
What day is it?
Wednesday.
Wednesday the 20th. So we're thinking 7 PM,
January?
January, Wednesday, January 20th at 7 PM.
I won't be awake.
You won't, or you will?
I will be.
You will be awake. Is that all done? Are we done with that?
Yep.
One last thing. I see Jamie Williams is here. Everyone got a copy of a proposed enterprise zone program for Chestertown. It's what remains after the RISE program sort of didn't rise. So this is a map that the whole council got that shows the areas that might be designated as this, and you also got the booklet that DHCD prints about what an enterprise zone does, and just to highlight it, that DHD reimburses the local jurisdiction 50% of the revenue loss as a result of operating business located in its zone, the property tax credit. The property tax credit is a 10-year credit against local real estate property taxes on the value of a portion of the real property improvements. So if somebody has a vacant lot and they build a $500,000 business there, which we would think was great, they would be, the credit is 80% for the first 5 years, this is on the improvement only, and decreases 10% annually thereafter to 30% in the 10th and final year. And that's with the state reimbursing the local jurisdiction. This is pretty complicated. Jamie could probably tell you more about it, but I think it's a hard thing to not go along with, because right now, if you have nothing, and you have raw land and you want to encourage people to do things, and by the way, we included the institutional zone because it's really an RB zone also in the corner. So anybody who wants this map, I'm not asking you guys to do this tonight because I think April is what we're headed for, but if you just generally like the idea of it, I think Jamie will probably go back and tell the commissioners that we generally like the idea of these areas. No one is left out in this, because if your property is fully built, it's very hard to be part of the enterprise zone unless you build stories up or something.
I mean, in a nutshell, it provides tax incentives for landowners of raw land to build on that raw land. And a lot of these parcels have been raw land for a long time.
Does this exist forever, or is there?
10 years.
10 years?
Yep.
I know the tax part is 10 years, but I mean, just, if we were to come in the end of 10 years, we'd have to renew this if we wanted to renew it.
That's a good question. I don't know.
Jamie, you want to step forward? Because this is...
That's correct. We would have to ask to have it renewed if we wanted to, but the Department of Commerce is actually redoing all of their incentive programs. So if we could get this enterprise zone, it would probably be the last one, because they are doing away with enterprise zones. And they're moving towards a tiered system. But I did check to make sure that it was still, we weren't wasting our time by moving forward with this with all the impending changes. And they said no, since they've already committed and started working with us on this, that this should go through.
So whatever they come out with next won't be able to stack with what we have.
No.
So we're locked in with this plan for the next 10 years.
You're not locked in,
Right.
but if we go into the enterprise zone and then there's properties actually have to apply themselves. They don't automatically get the credit. They have to apply, it has to be approved by the town and the county. And then once it, well, actually just by the town at that point if it's in the town. And then once the application's approved, then they qualify for the credit. If the enterprise zone goes away and the tiered system comes into play the way that the Department of Commerce is talking, then any new properties would go by the tiered system.
I see, okay.
And we're at a tier 2, Kent County's a tier 2 right now, so it looks like we'll get some modest incentives, whereas before we didn't qualify for many at all.
Is there any other towns doing this?
Not in Kent County, actually. Chestertown, this is the only census tract in Kent County that qualifies for the enterprise zone because of poverty levels. And Federalsburg in Caroline County is the most recent one that just got designated as an enterprise zone. But there are no other places in Kent County that qualify.
And when you say tiers, I mean, how many tiers are there?
There are 3 tiers, and that's just being talked about, so that none of that is definite. That's what they're going forward with in the legislative session, Department of Commerce, and there's 3 tiers. And Kent County right now falls right in the middle.
Okay.
With that state backing, it's a large financial item if there's a lot of new growth. Right. And it's not totally vacant land. I mean, if somebody has a part of their property that they can add to and increase, it's also, I didn't read about this, but credit for wages that go to new employees, and that's a big kind of bonus thing. That's what we're looking for too. So.
But nobody can go.
If you had an underdeveloped.
If we pass this now, some of the development we have going on right now they don't qualify, right?
No.
I was thinking about the Tidewater building on High Street.
So are they not paying local taxes, state taxes, or both?
That would be,
What is
local real property taxes.
On the
That's what
value
we're
of
doing.
improvements to the property.
They'd still pay the
Yeah.
same tax they pay now, but if they have $1 million parcel and they.
Gotcha.
And they build a bunch of stuff on it, now it's worth $2 million, they're still paying tax on
Right.
$1 million for 10 years.
But they're-
But at the end of the 10 years,
Right.
we get the benefit of what they put into it.
Yeah, we
And
get
that
half of
added
that,
back.
yeah.
So it basically just encourages people to.
But there's a percentage as you go along with the state reimbursement that you're actually getting. So you also get credit for being business friendly and for wanting things to happen.
Job creation.
I think that's,
So what do you want from us?
well, you could say tonight that you're for this, or you could say, hey, we're tentatively for this so that Jamie can go discuss it further with the county.
I can see a downside.
I think we should endorse it.
Right,
I mean,
I think you can endorse it.
I mean, I'd like to make a move that we move ahead in cooperation with the county to establish, to apply for this designation as the enterprise zone.
Yep.
All right, there's a motion.
Enterprise.
Is there a second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
I think that's it, Mayor.
Okay, that brings me to the mayor's report. This is some big stuff. We got our decoration contest winners to announce.
We get a drum roll?
I'm just going to announce them, you guys can't retract. I mean, is this what you really
I
want?
spent hours and hours and hours.
Okay, let's move forward. First award, first place, $50, George Nelson, 210 Byford Drive, congratulations. Second place in the first award is getting $25 is Robert and Lois Townsend, 12 Byford Court. In Ward 2, Linda Kuiper. She's not the winner, that's her award. $50 go to Albert and Tammy Fauber, 127 Washington Avenue. The second prize winners receiving $25, Leaf and Marguerite Gelbranson at 110 Spring Street. Both of those look beautiful, beautiful. In the third ward, the first place winner, Janet and Donald Wilkerson, 620 High Street, $50 first prize. And in second place, Wayne and Christina Strayer at 208 Kennedy Drive. In the fourth ward, William and Sheila Lepter at 201 Glen Street are the first place winners, $50. And in second place, Brooke Lynn Bennett, 409 Greenwood Avenue, $25. In the commercial districts, we had three winners. The Imperial Hotel at is that 208 or 200?
208, sorry.
208 High Street. They did a really nice job this year. The train station at 400 South Cross Street, KRM, also did a really nice job working with the town to decorate their trains. Looks really cool. It's a nice anchor. And then East Coast Storage LLC at 848 High Street. That was brought to my attention by Jen, and they did a really nice job as well. So thank you to everybody who, I don't know if you meant to participate in that, but thank you for decorating your property. My second item is that's not on my agenda, but it kind of came in. If I wait on this, it's going to take longer. All right, I'll wait on that. Okay, food trucks. We did have a request from one of our food truck owners to requesting whether or not we thought it would make sense to allow her to set up on town property in downtown in particular. And we kind of had a brief discussion and then tabled the discussion for tonight. So has anybody come up with other thoughts about this hot button issue?
Have we had any more information from her?
I have, actually.
We had nothing on specific location, hours.
I received this actually via email this morning. And I get the sense that Ashley met with a lawyer and looked at our
I'm kidding.
looked at our zoning code as it relates to food vendors. And basically,
I need to read this.
this attorney with her came up with what would basically be a text amendment for itinerant food products. So I'll just read it. Any itinerant food products dealer shall, A, be exempt from the provisions of 130-5 of this chapter and shall pay an annual licensing fee of $35. Be restricted to Park Row or the southeast side of the foot of High Street or any C1, C2, or C3 district, except that no itinerant food products dealer shall park within 150 feet of an existing restaurant or other food and beverage establishment. C, will provide proof of all state and county licenses and permits required to operate an itinerant food products concession at the time of application for a license under this section. D, shall not operate during the regular hours of the farmer's market, except upon notifying the town or farmer's market manager a week in advance and paying the fee required of other food vendors for selling foodstuffs at the market. And E, no bell, whistle, horn, klaxon, or system of sound amplification may be used after 8 p.m. So those were some of their ideas. So I guess we need to figure out what are some of our ideas.
Whose ideas?
The people with the trucks.
The folks with the trucks, yeah, in particular the Black Borough.
When they talk about Park Row used to be starting at the post office running all the way down to, but now that's no longer Park Row, right? Or is
That one is, the other one.
Memorial.
Oh, Memorial, yeah. You know, they may like that, but I certainly don't think that we should be parking them adjacent to the fountain.
No, but it's the block. Oh, well, we could restrict them to the other side of the street, I suppose.
I would restrict them to
But that's a residential area.
Memorial Park on the inside area.
Oh, I wouldn't like them down by the Moore Memorials. I think that's,
I mean, let's start with the broader idea.
Yeah.
What do we think in general of having food trucks in town, on town-owned streets? I'll say, for me, I'm actually in favor of it. I walk around town Tuesday at 11 or 12 or 1, and honestly, there's not a whole lot going on downtown in the middle of the week, and I think anything that we can do to promote more business and bring more foot traffic is a good thing. Yes, the devil is in the details. Obviously, we found this is maybe a little tricky to enforce because by definition, these things can move around and it's kind of a pain in the butt to keep track of them, to be candid, but I think it's a good thing.
It's an unfair advantage to those people who pay property taxes, pay heat and electric. They have to be open every day to have their restaurant. If you have a food truck and it's raining hard that day, you just say, oh, heck, I'll just stay home. But there's other people who have employees coming in. It's just an unfair advantage. And if they sell 25 sandwiches, that's 25 sandwiches that might have been bought at JR's or some of the other restaurants in downtown area. And those people pay dearly for that. $35 or whatever that fee is. It's nothing.
I did some research on this today, looking at some things that we had presented to us several months ago, and there's a report from the National League of Cities about what's going on in about 13 cities across the country, and the charges charged for food trucks range from about $150 to $400 a year. So, point one, I think $35 is
too little.
It's too little. I do personally, I'm not a huge fan of food trucks, but I do know that it's a trend for the younger generation in particular, and I think that it's another form of entrepreneurship that allows younger people to get into the food business because they haven't got the huge investment. I do think that at least 150 feet from an existing brick and mortar restaurant is a minimum. They average in these cities about that. 200 feet is a common setback. And, maybe in our small streets, 200 feet is too much.
Here we're going to put them someplace that's better than where the poor restaurant happens to be.
Well,
J.R. would love to have his restaurant right in the middle of the Fountain Park, I'm sure.
I don't like Fountain Park as a location, nor would I like to see food trucks parked alongside our war memorials, just out of respect. I'm not sure what the answer is in terms of a location. A lot of cities designate like vacant parking lots or vacant lots that are owned by the local jurisdiction as a place for food trucks to gather. And most restrict, there's nothing in there about hours of operation, and most restrict them to, at the latest, 10 o'clock at night.
No, yeah. I think, for me, I think Fountain Park makes sense because it's a market. It's a market every Saturday where we have 30 tents set up in the grass selling all kinds of stuff. So why can't we have a food truck there on a Tuesday at noon? I mean, to me, that's way less intrusive than the farmer's market, which I think we all think is a great thing.
This is more traditional use, yeah.
On Saturday mornings, there is no room at the farmer's
I
market.
agree.
for a
I
food
told
truck.
Ashley,
It's not, because
said
it's
that.
not wanted.
Not operate during
If we
the
have one of our establishments who are teetering on
Marty,
the edge,
you know, they could have.
and they lose business enough that it pushes them over, so they close out and they get rid of their 7 or 8 employees that they have working for them. And we have another vacant place downtown. I just
They could
don't,
have had a food truck.
I think it's an unfair advantage to those people who are in the restaurant business right now, so.
But as the saying goes, the more you have, in a particular area, the more people are likely to come down. So, having that food truck there might increase the overall foot traffic.
There's something to be said for that.
I know that we were given a petition with about 280 names on it, and there were several people on that petition that have brick and mortar establishments. So I know we were some people were brought up the fact that the truck was in front of the Chestertown Lonnie Cheese Shop. And according to Ashley, the owner, they actually asked her to be there because they liked how she generates foot traffic, and then those people would go into their store. So it was actually a symbiotic relationship rather than one where she was sucking business away from her, at least in that instance.
But she's not selling sandwiches.
The thing right up above it. There's really, there's really a precedent for this. If you look at the existing ordinance, the lines right above E, person selling locally grown fresh produce and locally caught fish, seafood products shall be exempt from the provisions of this chapter and shall pay a fee of $150, a 30-day license. Furthermore, which is odd, saying this is under the exempt from licensing requirements and you're licensing them. But it was passed in 1984, and I don't think, other than the farmer's market, I've ever seen anyone set up or asked to do that. Jen, I know you haven't been here since then, but have you ever had anyone say, hey, it's in your ordinance, I want to go to Park Row on the southwest side of it and set up, and here's $150. I got locally grown produce. So you actually have kind of a precedent. I think this could be redrafted. What they drafted is fine for them drafting it. First of all, I don't think $35 a year is a fair thing for someone to conduct business.
Well, we did that for 90 days, remember?
I know when you did it,
in the
and I
beginning?
disagreed at the time,
And we were
and I don't
supposed
vote either.
to
So.
get back to it after 90 days.
I think it should be based sort of on the advantages the business gets, and I think it should be open to other, what are these called, buses? They're
food trucks.
Food trucks.
Oh, yeah, it can't be just for one person. Like, that's something we need to consider too. Like, if we make this okay for one person, it's gotta be okay for anybody with a food truck.
Space available.
So what if, maybe we limit the number of permits we give?
Well, so there's another thing. Some cities have like a first come, first serve. They limit the spaces that are
Right.
designated, and they either have a lottery or they have a first come, first serve.
How big are these cities you're surveying?
There were, we all have this report. They varied in size.
Sidewalks on the parks for them to
They
use.
they went from
So when
Washington,
they're stepping out,
D.C.,
they're not beating down the grass.
That's right.
Durham, they're all a lot bigger than
This is
Chestertown, of
crazy, too, this thing
course.
about the C1, C2,
Indianapolis.
3, that's
I
too
agree.
open-ended, that's got
But-
to go. We should say where it's going to be.
You've put together a report?
And then
I would know.
X number of dollars a month.
You're talking about.
We all got this in our boxes some months ago, and I just dug it out and looked at it.
Well, I think
Well,
I'd
we're
like a
gonna-
chance to read that and to mull this over a little more. Maybe you guys are talking to different restaurant owners, but I've talked to a couple of them who are adamantly against it.
They're not happy.
And they're paying their taxes right now regularly, so.
The food trucks
And it's a
are
lot more than
bigger
$35.
than a regular pickup truck, too. If you have them on Park Row, they're going to take up more than one space, and do you want them to be parallel to the sidewalk?
Exactly, all that.
In that case, then we're going to have more other
I agree.
signs on the
I don't like
on the
Parker.
meters.
If it's me, it's Cross Street, actually. They're parallel parked on Cross Street with the window facing the brick sidewalk.
As she has been in inappropriate spots, but, I mean, parking in a 15-minute only for compact cars only spot is not exactly
On
appropriate.
Cross Street? You wouldn't
On
have to
the-
worry, if you
on the-
limit it to that, you'd only get one food truck, there's no
Well,
room
maybe
for it.
that's what it is. I think you could fit 3 or 4 there. I mean, we only have 2.
Lose all those parking spots. Tough.
Well, I think
What
it is.
side
a
of Cross Street?
Placement.
The Cross Street
Placement's
side of Fountain Park.
Oh, down there. Oh, I was thinking on the
No,
other
no, no, I'm
side.
talking about Fountain Park, the
Playing
Cross
against things wouldn't
Street.
be too bad.
Okay,
Sidewalk
that
that
would
we-
fit because there is one truck that parks there at the farmer's market. But if you look at the markings on that side of the street, it curves in at where the horse trough is, because people turn right on High.
Okay.
Well, but I think it should never be at the same time as the farmer's market.
I agree.
No,
Yeah.
We
no.
didn't put that in here.
And they actually did write that.
Yeah, but
It
this is
can't be-
weekdays
but I'm
and
saying,
Sundays.
yeah, it can't
After
be.
12 o'clock on Saturdays, like between 12
Well,
and...
I would
Saturday.
say after 1, because it takes some of them
Okay.
till 1
Right.
to,
I think we
Yeah.
agree that if this happens, it shouldn't interfere at all with the farmer's market. To me, the Cross Street side of Fountain Park makes the most sense because you can just parallel park like any other car. And if there's no space there, you go to the foot of High Street, maybe.
yeah, I
Or
think you're
Wilmore
only going
Park,
to get 2.
Where there's public parking
Well,
already.
they're not as big as this one, no.
I really like your idea, though. I think on Cross Street, it's not remote from other restaurants, but it's certainly.
It's at
a little-
least, that's at least 150
There's
feet
a little
from any
gap.
other restaurant that we currently have
So
service.
you pull in lots of places and walk over there.
She says to be restricted to Park Row or the southeast side of the foot of High Street, or any C1, C2, or
Yeah.
C3 district.
I don't like that because then
that's
we don't even know
everywhere.
if it's a town road, it might be a state road.
And it could be anywhere. I mean, that's giving
It is a
a
state
license
road.
for them to be almost.
It is a state road.
I know it is.
Okay, well, how do we want to proceed from here?
Let us draft, based on what you all have said tonight, we'll draft our version of this.
Okay.
If somebody wants to say what they suggest it should cost a month, or a day, or a week, let me know. But I don't think $35 a year is really.
$35 a week would probably be cheap.
Well, I don't want to scare anybody with a number, but I mean, you can discuss that when a number gets thrown out.
Okay, so Bill, you're gonna take a stab at that?
And I commend them for finding a pretty neat place in all of our ordinances to put that. It's under, peddling, and that's sort of in a way it is. And they're not itinerant, but they are peddlers.
Okay. Good discussion, guys. Moving along. Ron Abler, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, Obler.
Ron Abler, we have a proclamation, actually. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Well, in 1765, the Maryland Assembly carved Chester Parish out of St. Paul's, Kent, and Shrewsbury and created a new parish, Chester Parish. We are Emmanuel Church, Chester Parish, because in 1862, the parish started with the parish church at IU. And in 1859, the church at IU was going into disrepair, and they transferred the parish church to Emmanuel Church, which was not yet called Emmanuel Church. It was the chapel at Chestertown, which had been there since 1706. And we didn't we didn't reconsecrate our church to Emmanuel Church until 1882, after the renovation from a two-story building down to the one-story that it is today. And January 3rd of 1766, the first vestry at IU met and held its meeting because the Assembly Act said that they would meet on the first Tuesday of the month on the January following the act in 1765, and would meet thereafter every month on the first Tuesday of the month. January 3rd this year is on this coming 2 weeks from, or a week from this coming Sunday. and we're holding a 250th birthday party of our vestry, because the original vestry transferred from IU to Emmanuel Church. So it's kind of a shared anniversary
Yeah, that's really cool.
IU. And
So let me read a little bit about, here I have a proclamation from the city of Chestertown. It reads, whereas in 1765 in Annapolis, the Assembly of the State of Maryland did create Chester Parish from portions of St. Paul's, Kent, and Shrewsbury parishes, and whereas the freeholders of the said newly elected parish were granted full and ample powers to meet at the crossroad called IU on the first Tuesday in January of the following year, and whereas said freeholders did meet on that first Tuesday in January next ensuing at the aforesaid church at IU on January 3rd, 1766, I'm going to skip to the end here. Be it proclaimed that I, Chris Serino, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of Chestertown and the county of Kent, do hereby declare this 3rd day of January in the year of our Lord 2016 to be the Chestercentennial, that's a new word for me, of the vestry at Chester
That's a
Parish.
centennial right up there on your seal.
Just, it's all coming together now. In the testimony of this proclamation, I herewith set my hand and cause the seal of the city of Chestertown to be affixed this 21st day of December, 2015. So this is one of our really neat stories of our community. So thank you for bringing this to our attention. And what are the hours of your event?
Oh, on Sunday, January 3rd at 11:45, well, between 11:45 and 12 o'clock, after the 10:30 Mass, we'll be holding our birthday party with cake and ice cream and local colonial delicacies. And you are invited to present the proclamation if you wish. We will have a church crier, not choir, but crier, proclaim or read the proclamation. And then we would be proud to have somebody from the city of Chestertown present it.
Sounds good.
And if you can make it, you're more than welcome.
Thank you very much. Well,
Second
what,
man.
should I give this to you, the original? Signed
Yes,
copy?
I'll frame it.
All
It'll
right.
be framed when it's presented.
Okay, thank you for
Thank you
bringing
very
that to
much.
our attention.
I appreciate
Hope you have a great event. I'm definitely checking my calendar.
All right, thank you very much. Or you're welcome to send a delegate, as senior or as junior as you have authority over.
Okay, it might be my 11-year-old son.
That'll work too.
All right.
Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
Okay, update on our marina efforts. So at our last meeting on December 7th, we had submitted a capital project request to Governor Hogan for $1.5 million for the revitalization of the marina. And at that time, I basically asked the citizens of our community to help us by writing letters of support for the project. So to that end, we put our case statement on our website. We put a list of talking points and just encourage people to write. And I'm really happy to report that we got a phenomenal response. Right here, I'm holding a stack of support letters. This is just generated in 2 weeks. And it's pretty amazing. We're up to 108 letters as of this meeting. And the support was something that I found was really noteworthy. It was certainly bipartisan. We got some great letters from the county commissioners, from the president and board members, and some faculty at Washington College. A lot of town residents, but a lot of Kent County residents, a lot of Queen Anne's County residents, tall ship captains from other states, people that just don't even live here and can just visited the town by boat. So to me, it really showed just how much of a broad-based support this has. Really surprised even me. You know, I had about 30 people in my mind that I wanted to ask, and then the letters just kind of came pouring in from all parts of the county and elsewhere. So these letters will be sent to the governor and some of the top lieutenants that he has in Annapolis tomorrow, hopefully by 3 o'clock. What's great about the fact that people sent them to us is it enabled us to scan the letters so that we will have these on file. We're going to make a PDF of this that we can then email to people, that so just so we can show very clearly how much support this really does have. And I also want to say, if for some reason you still want to write us a letter and you didn't make this deadline, please keep them coming, because and keep turning them into town hall, because we can just send another batch after the holidays and just kind of keep pestering the folks in Annapolis to get their attention. To me, this is just a really, really important initiative for the future of the town. So thank you to everyone that did help. Couldn't be happier with the results, and we'll definitely keep everyone posted moving forward. Lastly, we just sent out an RFQ, which stands for Requests for Qualifications for one element of the marina, which is the new, basically the new headquarters, which we're calling the Waterfront Interpretive Center, where we'll have a new marina store, which will have signage about the history of the town, new restroom and shower facilities, perhaps a retail component on the first floor, and hopefully a second floor that's just open with views of the river that public groups can rent for community events down at the newly formed marina. And we did get about $40,000 in funds to hire an architect to create a build-to rendering of what this building will look like. And so we're going to hire an architect in the coming weeks and hopefully really get the ball rolling on what that's going to look like, how much it's going to cost, and we can start raising funds for that as well. So the ball is really rolling on that project, and we'll continue to keep you apprised as new developments arise. Which ends my report and brings us to our ward report. So why don't we start on your end tonight, Mark?
Okay, thank you. I just want to make a remark about the letters. Usually people write letters when they want to protest something. Once in a while, they write a letter when they want to compliment something. But these letters were written for a real cause, and I think that's really remarkable that we got that kind of response. When he asked for that, I thought, geez, if you get 25 letters, you're going to be lucky. And I'm just overwhelmed by the fact that we got that many letters. This is not necessarily the ward report, but it's a little bit about Chestertown itself. I went on the internet, on the Yahoo thing, and it came up, the 10 best places to retire in the state of Maryland. So I said, well, that'd be interesting to look on there. And it started out with 10 was Hagerstown. And I started scrolling down. And I really got concerned when I got to 5 and Chestertown wasn't mentioned. I got to 4 and it wasn't mentioned. 3. Chestertown is number 2. I think we should be number 1. Number 1 is Ocean Pines. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Ocean Pines or not.
Yeah.
But it's a retirement village, and they may be incorporated. I don't know. Anybody knows that or not? I guess they are, or they wouldn't be considered. But they have, I don't know what they use for criteria. They didn't mention the fact that we have a hospital and a college, and we have everything that we all know we have, and that our average rent is $800 a month, and you go down to number 1, and theirs is $1,300 a month.
What a deal.
And plus, we have 27% that are over 65. They have 35% that are over 65. So, I don't understand why we're not number 1, but I'm certainly happy to be number 2 in the state of Maryland. So, if anybody's interested in that, I'd love to tell you who made the survey. Some social something or other made the survey out. But number 2, we're just going to work harder and we'll be number 1 next year.
All right.
And that's the end of Ward 4.
All right, Ward 3.
So everything looks pretty good in Ward 3. Gateway Park is coming along and it's just about done. I guess they just have to throw some sod down and that's about it. Is there any other major projects that they have to do?
I don't think we've moved the railing yet and put the last bit of sidewalk.
Right.
And there's landscaping that goes in there too.
Yeah, that's going to look really nice.
Shoreline landscaping.
Good deal. So very excited about that. For the past few weeks, I've been serving on the county's Renewable Energy Task Force, and that kind of came about after the windmill discussion that we had. So the county is trying to figure out how to best continue dialogues about not only wind, but also solar, where we put this renewable infrastructure in the county, and just how much acreage do we allow it to take up in some of our light industrial zoning around the county. So I've been serving on that and representing Chestertown for the past few weeks. But yeah, everything is looking pretty good.
Linda?
Okay, what is it, 4 more days till Christmas. And I want to remind people to shop downtown, and the Historical Society will be
shop
open.
in town. It'd be nice if somebody would go up to the
Well,
shopping
you
center.
should, you could have
shop in Chestertown.
I have
It's her
ward
board report,
too.
Marty.
I'm reminding you to shop in town.
Yeah, you missed
You
your
could have
chance.
said something.
I'm like you,
And-
Sam, there is other parts of this town besides downtown.
I'm not worried about the other parts. The Historical Society will be open the rest of the week, and then it'll be closed from after they close on the 24th until January 6th. The farmer's market will be this Thursday instead of Wednesday.
Oh,
So-
Thursday was Christmas.
No, Christmas, that's
Eve.
Christmas Eve.
All right.
It'll be Thursday instead of Wednesday,
74 degrees.
Golfing day.
whatever. And
Trouble for that.
it was very nice of the Chestertown Volunteer Fire Department to invite us to their annual awards dinner. It was a very nice evening. And let's see, I've had several complaints that there aren't any lighted candles, and I said something to Jen tonight in the town building and the visitor center.
The batteries ran down.
Well, you couldn't even see them really when
Yeah,
the batteries were
Yeah.
full, blast or whatever. So it would be nice if the town had candles in the
Real
windows.
candles, not the
Real
battery-operated
candles.
Those
that-
things,
Real
they
candles?
might still be lighting.
Real lighted, huh?
They might still be
You mean
lighting.
electric?
They lasted forever.
And this meeting ends my first 4 years on the council. It has been a pleasure to serve all the residents in my ward and the businesses, and it's been very rewarding for me, too. My ward is, I think, the most diverse in the town, and I've really enjoyed the past 4 years. Merry Christmas to everybody.
And you got 4 more coming up.
Coming up, but I mean, it's gone by so
Yeah, it
fast.
does. And sometimes it goes by so slow. Depends on the day for me. All right, Liz,
Kidding.
sorry.
Not at all. I represent the council, not at every meeting, but when I can attend the Chestertown Environmental Committee, and they have come up with their 2016 film and lecture series. I'm not going to run through them all. We are hoping that we're going to be able to use the GAR, the Sumner Post, for the films. But the first event is something people might be interested in on January 7th. Ed Minch is going to talk about protecting your house against leakage of heat and how to improve your energy conservation in your home. That is at 6:30 in this building on the second floor. And Jen, I was wondering if this can be posted somewhere on the website, the
Yeah,
list of...
I was asked to post it a little bit closer to the end of the year, so I was going to
Okay.
do it next week.
Terrific. The second thing I wanted to say is I noticed, driving around looking at all the wonderful Christmas decorations, and I think I brought this up last year, but a fair number of homes with numbers, house numbers, that are really not visible from the street in the dark, or they've been overgrown by shrubbery, or in some cases, covered by the Christmas decorations. I was trying to judge. I had to go back in daylight to even see, and there were still homes that didn't have any numbers. And I'd just like to remind people to think about the time that the fire truck or the ambulance is trying to find their address. Go out to the middle of the street and make sure you can actually see your number from your house, especially in the dark.
Or the person who wants to give them a prize.
Yeah, or the person who wants...
I went to, one of my houses had no number on it
Exactly.
that won a prize. I had to go
Find it.
look at their mail to find out where they lived.
So it's just a safety
Gave it
tip
to
I'd
the
just
wrong
like to
lady.
remind people. And I also would like to extend best wishes for the season to everybody in town.
Yeah, well, I think we all want to wish
Yeah.
everybody. I was hoping, you notice I got a Christmas tie on, I was hoping to wear a purple tie, but that's not happening. The Ravens don't seem to want to win, so I won't be doing that.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Okay, there were no requests from the public to be on the agenda. Are there any questions or comments tonight from the audience? All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So
Make a
moved.
motion to adjourn for
Second.
2015.
That's it.
All those in
We
favor?
have to have a special
Any opposed?
emergency meeting.
All right, we unanimously adjourned at 9:10.
Wow.